The common definition of death row is that this is a special section of the prison that holds prisoners who are awaiting execution after being sentenced to death for the prosecution of major crimes. In the United States, after an offender has been found guilty of a capital crime, the judge gives the jury the option of either imposing a death penalty or life imprisonment without the chance of parole. It is then up to the jury to determine whether to grant a death sentence. It typically has to be a unanimous verdict. If the jury decides on the death penalty, the defendant must stay in death row during the appeals and other trials, which can last for many years. Thus, when an execution date is finalized, the convicted inmate goes through a standard ritual prior to execution, which is their last meal. Several countries have different customs in this regard, but in several countries, the prisoner can, within reason, choose what the last meal would be. The choice of food actually reveals a lot about the personality of a person. So death row choices are a strong example of this theory. Here are some of the strangest meal requests on death row. 12. Eileen Wuornos. One of the most notorious female serial murderers in American history was Eileen Wuornos. Her last meal choice is as intriguing as her life, which inspired the award-winning movie Monster. On October 9, 2002, in Florida, Wuornos ordered just one black coffee before her death. People think that Wuornos' aversion to a last meal may well have been stemmed from her suspicion that during her time behind bars, prison staff had tampered with her food. Alternatively, Eileen may actually not have been hungry on that day. Either way, her final cup of coffee falls well under the $20 food budget, which was set by the state at the time. 11. Marion Albert Pruitt. Next on our list is the strange last meal request by inmate Marion Albert. He wanted to have enough food that could feed a marauding army. Actually, Pruitt said that he wished to share his meal with another prisoner who would be hanged on the same day. He asked for a Pizza Hut stuffed crust pizza, a big bag of French fries, 4 Burger King Whoppers, 3 2-liter Pepsi bottles, fried squash, fried eggplant, fried okra, and a whole pecan pie. He also wanted to ask for a roasted duck, but he didn't really believe the prison would cook it for him. 10. Victor Harry Fragworth. Victor Fragworth was charged and convicted for murders in the federal court. He was condemned to death by hanging. Victor appealed the decision, but it was dismissed. At that time, only President John F. Kennedy could have stopped the death penalty. Harold Hughes, Iowa's then governor, was an opponent of the death penalty. He, along with Victor's lawyer, approached Kennedy to ask for clemency in Victor's case. Kennedy thought the crime was so brutal that he refused their appeal. He was the last federal prisoner to be hanged in the United States before the death penalty moratorium after criminal lawsuit Furman v. Georgia. He also was the last citizen to be executed in Iowa. Following the death of Victor, the next federal execution would happen almost 40 years later, and that was for Timothy McVeigh with the bombing of Oklahoma City. Aged 28, Victor was finally condemned to death. The interesting thing is that he asked for a single olive with a pit in it for his last meal. Simple yet strange choice. 9. Lawrence Russell Brewer. Lawrence Russell Brewer asked for a massive amount of food. His list included 2 chicken fried steaks and sliced onions soaked in gravy, a cheese omelet and ground beef, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, and jalapenos, a triple meat bacon cheeseburger with everything on one side, 1 pound of barbecued meat, and half a loaf of white bread, a big bowl of fried okra with ketchup, a Pizza Hut meat lover's pizza, a slab of peanut butter fudge with crushed peanuts on top, a pint of Bluebell vanilla ice cream, 3 fajitas with all the toppings, and 3 root beers. While most of the prison systems might not approve such a huge request, the Texas prison system accepted it at the time. But this has been changed over since, so he was definitely lucky here. But they did not expect what was going to happen next. Brewer declined to eat when the food came, claiming he wasn't hungry. Now we know why they stopped accepting such requests. 8. Ted Bundy. Kenneth Meisner, Chris Hagen, Officer Roseland, Rolf Miller, and Richard Burton were several of the names used by Theodore Robert Bundy. At the age of 43, one of the most infamous serial murderers in American history was executed by the electric chair in Florida. He was condemned to death for rape, necrophilia, escape from prison, and more than 35 counts of murder. Bundy refused to have a special last meal, so he was served with the traditional last meal, including a medium-rare grilled steak, easy-boiled eggs, hash browns, butter and jelly toast, milk, and juice. 7. Ricky Ray Rector. While awaiting execution on death row, a prisoner's mind is likely to swim with emotions, particularly when their hour of death draws close. Perhaps this explains the unusual discussion that Ray Rector, who suffered significant brain injuries during a failed suicide attempt after his arrest, had with prison guards after he was served with his last meal. Rector had asked for steak, fried chicken, and cherry Kool-Aid, but he set aside his pecan pie dessert, telling the officers that he was saving it for later. Rector, a sturdy man, was killed by lethal injection on the 24th of January, 1992. The medical staff reportedly took more than 50 minutes to find an appropriate vein. 6. Thomas J. Grasso. Thomas J. Grasso, executed by the state of Oklahoma in 1995, also ordered a large meal. His last meal order included 24 steamed clams, 24 steamed mussels, half a dozen barbecued spare ribs, a Burger King double cheeseburger, half a pumpkin pie with whipped cream, 2 strawberry milkshakes, and sliced strawberries. Grasso also requested a 16-ounce can of meatballs and spaghetti. Later he complained that he had requested SpaghettiOs, not just spaghetti. 5. Alan Lee Davis. Also known as Tiny, Alan Lee Davis was a convicted murderer. He requested for a lavish last meal, and at the time of his death, his weight was just under 350 pounds. Davis decided to dine on fried potatoes, lobster tail, 6 ounces of fried clams, half a pound of fried shrimp, half a loaf of garlic bread, and 32 ounces of A&W root beer. On July 8, 1999, he was killed by an electric chair, but his weight is suspected to have caused difficulties. The controversy over the experience of Davis in the electric chair made him the last Florida inmate to be put to death in this manner, with lethal injection being used for all subsequent Florida executions. 4. Ronnie Lee Gardner. Ronnie Lee Gardner seems to have been well aware of his imminent death and was determined to put it off as long as possible. Gardner started by enjoying his last meal of steak, apple pie, lobster tail, vanilla ice cream, and 7-Up. He then continued to watch the film trilogy The Lord of the Rings in its entirety. This final wish gave Gardner more than enough time to reflect, given the duration of Peter Jackson's films. In addition to the film marathon, Gardner also partook in a 48-hour fast before he met his death. The whole process, including his choice to be executed by firing squad, was evidently spiritually motivated. 3. Timothy McVeigh. Timothy was responsible for the killing of 168 people and the injuries of more than 680 in the Oklahoma City bombing. 2 pints of mint ice cream were his last selection. Because his time was up, cholesterol and calories did not seem to be a concern, so he went for 2 pints to double the fun. If you don't want to feel like a balloon and then despise yourself on Saturday morning just because you're alive and a little chubby, you may want to ignore this choice or opt out for a sugar-free one. 2. John Wayne Gacy. The presence of John Wayne Gacy can still be felt today, residing in the minds of the Americans as one of the most eerie and terrifying serial killer stories in history. Gacy's last moment, though, was a depiction of typical American life. Before his last meal of French fries, fried shrimp, fresh strawberries, Diet Coke, and Kentucky Fried Chicken, he requested to have a picnic with his family on prison grounds. After his meal, Gacy talked with the Catholic priest and was killed by lethal injection on the 10th of May, 1994. 1. Philip Workman. Philip Workman was executed in Tennessee in 2007 for the murder of a police officer. The trial surrounding the case was filled with controversy. Many people believed that Workman simply couldn't have shot the bullet that killed the police officer. There were demonstrations all over the country involving various high-profile personalities to share their opinions on the case. People in many parts of Tennessee could be seen with placards pleading with the state not to execute Workman. You might expect him to do what most death row prisoners do when it comes to his last meal: order a giant feast that they have little intention of eating. This was not the case for Philip Workman. Instead of requesting a final meal, Workman asked for a big vegetarian pizza to be ordered and given to a homeless individual. But his gesture was rejected. This led to dozens of people across Tennessee ordering the pizza in question and distributing it to homeless people across the state. You've just watched Strangest Last Meal Requests on Death Row. We hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching.